Forget frequently asked questions.
Common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
Go above and beyond.
they become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%.
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius Podcast
With Richard Jacobs.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius Podcast. I have a very interesting guest, Wade Lightheart. He's an author, athlete, nutritionist, and expert on fixing digestion. And he runs a company called BiOptimizers. And we're going to talk about that company, its products, and him, and digestion, and all those good things. So, Wade, thanks for coming.
Great to be here, Richard. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about your journey. Usually people in the health industry, unfortunately, they probably had some bad health thing happen to them or someone else, and that inspired them to say, I'm going to figure this out. And I don't know if that's your journey, but what's your background?
Yeah, exactly. Correct. So basically there's always these events that happen to us in our life, and oftentimes they're tragedy or they're major obstacles in life. And what I've found historically, to concur with what you said, is that these things that happen to us, which oftentimes are very challenging at the time, often lead us to new discoveries or create the motivation for us to focus our energies and attentions. And I'm no different. And so I had a couple of key events that happened to me in my life to put me in this place where we're able to serve, helping optimize human beings. So the first one was grew up in Canada, played hockey, all that sort of stuff, living in a very rural area. But when I was 15 years old, three things happened within a very short period of time that changed the course of my life. One, my parents moved to a very rural area. It was 5 miles to my nearest neighbor, 55 miles from a town. The telephone poles and power poles ended at my doorstep. So I was removed from my regular peer groups, my sporting groups, all that sort of stuff, to live in this area. And it was a beautiful resort that my parents were caretakers for, but I certainly didn't want to be there at 15, but it gave me a lot of time, a lot of free time, and a lot of time where I wasn't doing the other things that other kids were doing. So the second thing that happened is my sister, who was 4 years my senior, she was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease, which is a form of cancer of the lymph nodes. And I watched her go through the medical model for 4 years before she died at the untimely age of 22. And during that process, it was heavy. But during that process, it had a big impact on me because, number one, I knew your health wasn't a guarantee. I knew your life wasn't a guarantee. And I also got to see inside the medical machine. And although the heroic efforts of the doctors and my parents and everybody involved, I don't fault the effort or the energy. I remember just driving home with her on the 55-mile drive home when she would take, quote unquote, a treatment. And she'd be getting out of the car and vomiting for, 5 or 6 times. And then, she'd be bedridden for a couple days. And this was, quote unquote, the treatment for the problem. And I thought, this is really, really bizarre. And that thought carried me into when I went to university to study exercise physiology. But before that, the third thing that happened was I was given a bodybuilding magazine by my sister. And on that was the cover was Troy Zucolato, Mr. California. You had 2 pretty girls on the cover. And I was like, wow, man, if I had muscles like that, maybe I could, get girls like that, being 15 and going out of your mind with testosterone and all that sort of stuff. So I purchased a little gym set, a little York barbell set, and built a gym in my barn, very much like, I think it was Rocky IV when he fought Ivan Drago. I had sawhorses and pulleys and 2-wheelers and tractor tires and all this sort of stuff that was very crude. Oh, wow. And I would go out there and train in the freezing cold. Sometimes my hands would freeze to the bar. Everyone thought I was crazy, but I had a vision and I had a dream, and I listened to Arnold Schwarzenegger's system that he talked about in Education of a Bodybuilder. It says that you could achieve anything with hard work, self-discipline, and a positive attitude. And that was, I had heard the hard work story from everyone around me, but the positive attitude and self-discipline was not something I heard. And so I embraced those principles and applied them, eventually moving to go to university and study exercise physiology, nutrition, and all that sort of stuff, which gave me a background. But what I was discontent with my university education is that there wasn't any real unified solution. It was a whole bunch of different information and a bunch of compartmentalized systems, but very little in the application process. And upon leaving university, I sought out, I went to California and met Joe Gold, and then worked in the fitness industry at various levels, working as a nutritional consultant at a supplement store. I managed a
Have
gym.
you been able to meet Arnold?
I have met Arnold. In fact, he trains at Gold's Gym here when it's open. It's closed right now. I'm here in Venice. He trains there every morning. So he's just one of the boys nowadays. So I did realize eventually, after 30 some years, my lifelong dream of being able to train in the gym with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it was virtually, a few months ago, that was a daily occurrence. So it's kind of interesting.
Cool.
And he's extraordinary guy. He's very kind and very aware of his celebrity. Everybody kind of gives him his space, but he interacts with all of the people in the gym at various times and kind of creates these magic moments. He's done that for me on a couple occasions, which have been really great. And he said when he retired from pumping iron in 75, he said that he would always be bodybuilding. He just wasn't going to compete. And there he is in his 70s at the gym, training like everybody else, and making jokes and having fun and just doing his thing. So I think that says a lot about the character of the person and his ability to follow through, even with all the fame and all the celebrity and all that sort of stuff. It's pretty incredible. So so going back, I guess I worked on every other fitness industry, won a bunch of bodybuilding titles, and eventually in 2003 got to represent our country at the Mr. Universe contest. And after the contest, I gained 42 pounds of fat and water in 11 weeks. Just had a total physical wreck. And so I made the classic mistake that so many people do. And that is, I got attracted to the sport out of aesthetics. And then I was focused on the performance aspect of the sport as an athlete, which was, in this case, was a combination of aesthetics and performance. But in doing so, I sacrificed my health. And I had the good fortune of meeting a medical doctor at that moment who had treated all these people with a variety of quote unquote untreatable conditions by fixing their digestion and their health and using enzymes and probiotics and all these different components to rebuild them people. And I remember going to his seminar, and I said to Dr. O'Brien, I said, Dr. O'Brien, I don't get it. I've got a background in physiology. I know I've got Spartan discipline. I got the best coach in the world. I've done everything I'm supposed to be at the pinnacle of ideals, at the world championships. Right. What am I doing wrong? And he said, Wade, you've learned to build the body from the outside in. I'm going to teach you to build the body from the inside out. So long story short, I mentored under him, rebuilt my health in 6 months, felt amazing on a level. Not only did I have the physical proportions and look that I wanted, but I had a new level of cognitive capacity, a new level of awareness. My energy levels were extraordinary. My sleep patterns had dropped. Like I didn't need that much sleep. And I really was able to transform in another world. And then my business partner, Matt, said, hey, this is a really interesting story with your whole bodybuilding. You're a plant-based guy winning going to the world championships, winning national championships, no drugs, all that stuff. Like, I think we can sell this online. So we started a company, and it's, we've been doing that now. I think we've been working, that company evolved from a bodybuilding company to a human optimization company about 6 years ago. And that's what we know today as BiOptimizers.
When you say Dr. Tom, is that Tom O'Brien?
No, it was
okay.
Dr. Michael O'Brien. It was that.
Oh, Michael. Okay. Huh. So now your company, what's the main premise of it? Is what is it supplements? Is it whole eating system?
It's a lot of different things. We have three aspects that we address: aesthetics, performance, and health. That's the kind of like the triangle of what we call biological optimization. And what we're here to do is to end physical suffering and to activate biologically optimized health. And it goes, well, what is that? Well, basically leveraging, whether it's information, technology, nutritional supplementation, tech, you name it, in order to allow us to fully express our unique physical capacity as human beings. And that's not only extending lifespan, but also increasing capacity for life, or quality of life, and in extending our most effective years in a longer format. So that's our mission. It's a big mission, and we'll probably be on it for the rest of our lives.
How do you interact with clients typically? Like, what are some of the products that you have, and what do people consume from you?
Yeah, great question. So first and foremost, I think we focused on digestion. Right now, emergency hospital visits, 12% of the people that go in there it's a gastrointestinal issue. And 100 million people in the United States, about a third of the population, is on some sort taking something for a digestive condition any day, and 25% of those are on prescription meds. And so you look at, well, why is this? And there's a whole lot of reasons for that. So we decided to start off as we needed to optimize people's digestion first, because it doesn't make any sense to take a bunch of products or eat a bunch of diets that your body isn't able to digest, absorb, and assimilate. And so we started with first world-breaking kind of enzyme formulation, and then we went to a patented probiotic that we were able to develop, and then, hydrochloric acid, and then specific different types of enzymes for types of diets, and intestinal cleansers and parasite cleansers. And we completed out a complete digestive suite. And now we've moved on to nervous system, brain, blood, all these type of areas, which we've continued to expand and grow with our testing and development team.
So how do you, when someone comes to you first, is there a quiz to see, okay, based on what you're feeling and experiencing, you should try these products first? Or what's the flow of when someone first comes to you for help?
Yeah, great question. So it depends on what channel. So we're kind of an omni-channel company. Sometimes people will hear us on a podcast and they'll recognize, hey, I'm suffering from this condition. And we talk about some of the areas of how to optimize digestion. Sometimes they have reached out to us on Facebook or social media, or heard from us through a store or through a private practitioner, these type of things. So we have a lot of different channels in the company that we reach people who use different forms of media. Now, depending on where they are, we have done formats that people can kind of figure things out, or they can watch our instructional videos, or they can contact us at the team and say, hey, I've got this issue. And then we've kind of developed a variety of different systems to identify what could be the potential symptom that they want to alleviate and how we might do that. And we've created a bunch of instructional videos, education formats. So we've always been very heavy on education first. And of course, you can't supplement your way out of a bad lifestyle, but you can augment a bad lifestyle with supplementation. And ultimately, we can help steer you in the direction to get your lifestyle back on track in an optimal level.
So what's some common scenarios, stories that people have come to you and what happens to them? Any that jump out at you or really instructive or crazy? Yeah,
there's 4 distinct areas where I think we see the most common elements. Number 1, I've got the food I'm eating sits in my stomach like a stone. I wake up groggy and foggy, and I'm not able to concentrate, or I suffer from a variety of conditions like anxiety or depression. That's usually an enzymatic issue. They're not breaking down their food in the first essentials, the second stage of digestion. I have 5 stages of digestion. Second thing, people that suffer from acid reflux, heartburn, not because they have a hiatal hernia, but they're not producing enough hydrochloric acid in the body, and they're susceptible to infections, pathogens, whether that's bacterial, viral infections, or parasite infections. And then there's an overall, malaise when they eat certain types of food. Third area is there's some sort of dysbiosis going on in their gut. In other words, they get a lot of gas, a lot of blowing, they're constipated, or they've got the runs, their microbiome is offset, and something's not working there. And they need to get their microbiome back in order. And that's usually a probiotic, or it's some combination of those 3 oftentimes, because usually, it's when it comes to digestive issues, it'll start as one thing, but once you've disrupted the natural flow of digestion, it's a very complex and sophisticated process, though then it's like a downward chain of bad things start to happen. And so sometimes people need all 3 interventions. And then the 4th area where a lot of people have noticed or come to us is they're feeling anxious. They're not able to sleep. They can't handle stimulants like caffeine. All of a sudden, they find they get jittery or anxiety, sleep issues, relaxation issues, or overstressed. And we developed a kind of a breakthrough magnesium product that really we've never produced anything that's gotten this kind of rave. It's really caught fire. I mean, we released the product, I think, 4 or 5 months ago, and it's literally sold out 5 different times. And the who's who of everywhere is promoting it and loving this kind of interesting format of magnesium that we develop. So those are the 4 main areas. And then there's some subsidiary things, but those are the big ones.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
You should make a product where like it's embedded in a cloth mask, and as you breathe, the nutrients go into your lungs and make you feel better. That would be a appropriate product for right now.
Well, funny enough that you should mention that, and there is some science behind that. The technology exists about creating gaseous forms of herbs and things like that. So I actually have a Volcano. I don't know if you know what one of those are, but it's a German-designed machine.
A vaporizer?
That vaporizes various herbs and stuff. And so one of the things that I do is my biohacking experiments is that I vaporize a variety of different herbs and concoctions that we make up, and to see the somatic effects on the body. I do believe
that's similar to essential oils, because
you can do that
volatilizing. Yeah, so it's such a somewhat different method, but seems similar.
Yeah, and so I think that technology will continue to grow and develop over time. I know I use it. Paul Chek is a big advocate. If you know Paul, in fact, I was just down with Paul the other day, and we were combining different essential oils and herbs and things like that to produce unique experiences. Because if you inhale something, it goes almost immediately into the bloodstream. So you're able to create a somatic effect very, very quickly inside the body. Now, some products are, that works with, and obviously some aren't. Depends on the resistance to heat and how they vaporize, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, it's an exciting field, and I play around with that all the time. We've yet to release a vaporizing product yet, but I suspect in the next year or two, those will be coming down the pipeline based on our research. We do a lot of research before we release something, and we're very stickler about producing either a new product. In other words, there's no one ever created a product like it, or we create the best product in that particular class. And if we can't do those two things, we just don't produce it.
It'll be really interesting. I was just thinking, it's funny. A lot of people are vaping. If you feel like you could deliver something healthy through vape, because there's metal and there's stuff volatilizing. But if you could have a cartridge of healthy stuff, there's already the platform for certain people that, now we're doing that instead of smoking, and it could help them, especially if it was a product that, counteracted the negative effects of vaping.
Well, there is. I know. There's some B12 products right now, and I think there's another one I've seen. I forget what vitamin it is that people are vaping vitamins, and it seems to have a positive effect. I don't know all the the data is still early, but the anecdotal evidence is that people really enjoy it and like it. And of course, as I said, I've vaporized a variety of different substances that I feel a definitive positive effect from. So, for example, you can use you can use CBD flower in combination with essential oils. I like Dr. Nick the Wizard's oils. I'll put a few drops of that to take away any of the dryness. And then you can add, and you might add like gold and frankincense and myrrh, or you might have some kind of eucalyptus thing if you're feeling worried about lung infections or viral infections and things like that. You throw it in the vaporizer. You don't do any heat damage. You don't do any smoke damage. You don't have any of that sort of stuff. And you inhale it, and there's almost an immediate positive effect for people. And that's very, very powerful for people to develop. So the thing with cartridges is all about, it's really not the ingredient that you're vaporizing. It is what is the medium that is being vaporized with that seems to cause the problems.
Yeah. So I guess going back to a little bit more general stuff, there are a lot of companies putting supplements out, and, there's tons of them. So how have you decided to be different, and why do you think that your products are very effective? What is it about what you do that is different?
Yeah, well, I've had the good fortune to work on every single level of the supplement industry. So I know the inside, outside, upside, downside, and dark side, if you will. And because of that information that I was able to glean, I recognize that there's about 5% of the companies on the market are make a great product. And it's usually for the reasons that you actually indicated. The owner or founder of that company ran into some kind of health challenge, decided they wanted to fix it, comb the earth, figured it out, and produce something that worked for themselves and started sharing it with people who had the same issues. That story is so common. What typically happens, though, is a lot of those companies end up getting bought out at a certain level of success, either by a pharmaceutical or some other multinational, and then the product quality goes down, or they hit a lot of success. And what happens, the challenge then becomes supply chain, and then they cheapen the brand through less effective supply chains or more dubious formats that may not have the same potency and effectiveness. Because when you grow herbs or you grow, you develop your own cultures or probiotics and stuff, you are able to maintain the control. But when you turn that control over to other people and don't put the testing components in, people will oftentimes cut corners. So you have to really be due diligence. And so, we'll work on products sometimes for 2 years, 3 years before we release it. We have a number of products in the pipeline right now, and just keep going over to make sure we get the lines, the right product, the right combination, the right flavor, the right taste, or the right effectiveness, enough supply chain that's going to be able to scale effectively. All of those things are important when you're looking at it. But we call it the Formula One philosophy. Don't cut any corner. We're going to put the best possible products inside of it. And it's mission over margin. We have a fraction of the margin our company operates on as compared to other people. But we believe that if you solve a person's problem, then you'll build trust and loyalty, and they'll come back and use your products and use your service. And if you educate them and create a world-class experience, both from the product, the customer service, how you treat the customer, and then you de-risk it by offering an ironclad money-back guarantee on anything they try. Well, now you have a chance to earn the person's trust so that they try it. And if they like it, it's great. And if it, for whatever reason, doesn't work, then they get their money back, so that you don't be a spot on the industry, and and the customer is able to recognize that you're going the extra mile for them. Those are kind of the principles. It was a slower grow for us because of that, because you don't have the same amount of money to develop in marketing and things like that. And your materials cost way more than people who are building companies on margins, but you're around long. So we've been around for 15 years now because of those principles. And now we're kind of like a go-to brand amongst most of the influencers that are out there in the world of biohacking, et cetera, because they recognize, hey, here's a brand I know, like, and trust. We're certainly on the premium side of pricing, but I always say there's nothing more expensive than a product that doesn't work. And I can't tell you how many people said, well, I tried enzymes before, I didn't really notice anything. And then I tried your guys and I was like, whoa, it kind of blew me away. And that's the difference.
Yeah, I can tell you, like with HCL, I tried it from this one company, I think Biotics, and it worked really well. And I tried various combinations of the ingredients. I looked all the ingredients up on the label, and I supplemented with those exact ingredients from other companies, and it just didn't work. I don't know why, and it must be how that one company makes that product. So I'm sure the same thing happens with your stuff.
Well, I'll give you a specific example. So let's say you take a classic enzyme like protease. Well, most people don't know there are a variety of different types of proteases that work in different pH ranges. Okay, so just having a certain amount of protease, and protease is a very expensive enzyme to produce. Then there's different classes. So there's enzymes that are plant-based enzymes. There are enzymes that are animal-based enzymes, or these are called food enzymes, either animal-based or plant-based. And then you have systemic enzymes that you can't use to digest food, but only exert a systemic effect. And then there's enzymes that have been cultured. And a cultured enzyme is grown on very specific mediums using very elaborate processes that might be as long as 6 or 8 weeks to produce that enzyme. And then the extraction process, how you get the enzymes out of the medium, what kind of agents you use to do that to create it. So we use only cultured enzymes, which are 100 to 1,000 times more potent than, say, a typical food enzyme that you would get. They often will work in a much broader pH or pH range. And then, of course, we recognize that you need to target it. So in the case of proteases, with our number one selling enzyme product, which is Masszymes, which has 17 different enzymes plus 5 different types of protease. And each one of those proteases works on particular parts of the breakdown of protein into amino acids, because you don't need protein, you actually need amino acids. And without that complete breakdown, it doesn't work effectively. So when you're systematically putting together a product, it needs to be well thought out. You can't spare expenses, and you have to know how to put all of these agents together, as well as the supply chain of your base ingredients, in order to produce a world-class product. But when you do, now you have something that stands heads and shoulders above your quote unquote competitors. And so because we got into the enzyme market early and started to learn that process, we've been able to apply that to the other products that we've been able to develop over the years, which has been great.
Okay, excellent. Well, no fault to your own. Because of my equipment problems, we had to start a bit late. So now I'm out of time, but what's the best way for people to follow up, learn more about BiOptimizers and you? Where should they go?
Yeah, it's really, really simple. They can go to BiOptimizers.com/findinggenius, and you'll get a 10% discount code on anything that you order from us. So that's a little benefit. I have one of the things that I suggest when people go to the site is they can click on our 12-week Double Your Energy course. And basically, it's a 12-week course where I do 5 to 15-minute videos of everything I've learned in the health industry and combined it into a lifestyle. And so then I talk about it on Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff at BiOptimizers.com. But that course, you can kind of garner through the philosophies that we advocate, the principles of orthomolecular nutrition, how to emphasize the lymphatic system, types of water, you name it. We cover everything that I've learned in over 30 years in the industry, and make it easy for people to, take it in bite-sized chunks and apply it in their life. If they do that, then they're going to understand also the different products that we provide, what they are used for. Will give you insight into how to use them, what they're for, how best to optimize them. And that's kind of our mission in life. And it's a great mission, and I love doing it.
Excellent. Wade, thanks for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Richard. You have a great day.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.